I'd like to thank all of you. Thank you so much for all the efforts deployed. I really would like to thank Maria Grazia. Thank you, Maria Grazia. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for attending. Okay, then, without further ado, just one quick word on me. I've been to some of the Meet the Media Guru events. I know that you have to show who you are. So I'm not, going to go through one specific topic tonight. I'm here to make sure you understand the way I work. This is the MIT, this is Building 5. If you come and see me in Cambridge, please say hello, come for a coffee. It's easy to find my email address online. I'm also a teacher, and this is the class I teach, so on the use of AI for creativity and design. Well, I hold plenty of workshops and conferences around the world, and I'm also managing this research team. So AI is changing the world, we see the world. So thanks to visual, so data visual, so DVs, we can improve AI-based models. Now, this is a very short, intense overview filled with pictures, but I think this is the best way to tell you about what I do. And, I think, once again, you will hopefully like them because they represent my current business. I've been doing this for more than 20 years, so I had to choose a selection of the recent projects. There are two similar projects, WonderNet and another project on culture. I will show you a site-specific installation, so we will all go together to the first floor to see the site-specific installation. So it's been specially designed and conceived for an immersive room. FF, or Formal Fluence, this is the first step in my career to try and understand AI and biases, which is one of the key topics in terms of AI. Maybe you remember, some years ago you had quick draw, so you just had 30 seconds, to draw an object, for example, apple. If the system recognized or identified the apple, you get 1 point. So I worked with the members of the team who developed Quick Draw. I was lucky enough to use 2 billion drawings from this application. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is an overview of people who had to design a pizza because this is what the system wanted them to do. So 30 seconds, you have to really, really be fast-paced, quick, and intuitive. So these are pizzas. They look nice, but when you focus on the pizzas, well, they are not really very nice. I've chosen pizza because, well, this is a very simple reason. Let me tell you about this. In every symbol collection, you always have, some, disgusting figures or drawings. When it comes to pizza, people are very serious, and all of them definitely manage to draw a pizza, not something else. So I said, well, there must be something deeper. This is much more than, data to help AI understand our drawings. Maybe we can totally, disrupt the process so that we can really understand something more about us. So my question was, what about this data set? Is it really representing the entire humankind? There are so many different ways to do this. We can rely on, metadata. Maybe you have some Americans visiting Italy or Taiwan. So as Americans do, they play with the rest of the world. For example, sockets are different. Just compare the sockets in Italy, France, Japan, and the US, or Malaysia or Sweden, as you can see here. So this is the German socket, this is the Japanese one, the Malaysia one, and the Swedish one. So you just have 30 seconds to make these drawings so you do something very familiar. And then there is not convergence. Now, what do I mean by this? When you develop an algorithm, and in this case, this was for, signature identification. So it was an application for banks. You have to scale and overlap the drawings. So you do understand some objects have a perfect overlap. So you see, for example, the, wine bottle. In other cases, there's something totally inconsistent that, something that doesn't really look like a bottle of wine. Um, This is humankind. Now, this is Mona Lisa. Anyway, you can read it on the at the top of the drawings. This is a pineapple. This looks very natural. So this is included in our, well, let's say daily life, but this is not very technical as a smartphone can be. Now, of course, there are different ways to draw a smartphone. So it's an apple, so or even a pear. People are supposed to draw them in the same way. Or the teddy bear we all had when we were children. So we have convergence. And this comes from people from around the world. So it's a sort of a manifesto to the global peace. You know, we are all equal. Our brains do the same things. Um, let me tell you more about this cat. Um, we also discovered what you can see in the slide here. Repentance. Now, this means, drawing and then drawing again, trying again. This is typical of the Italian Rinascimento, so the Renaissance. The drawing was also able to represent the movements that you want people to see in your paintings. So this kind of technique was only carried out by one person, the artist. So repentance now, that was something, that just belonged to the artist. Now you have so many people drawing together. Just imagine they are all drawing the same drawing together. So let's try and draw a general, painting. So once again, we draw over and over again the same shapes. Now I will show you a video. Shapes dynamically generated by putting all of the drawings in sync. You will see a kitten coming up, and then you will see, well, basically the movement or the animation step by step basis. You can see people drawing together.
Vi svelo.
Now let me tell you about the different shapes. You must have seen, something really, really magical here because this is, human beings, so humankind, if you will, making the same gestures, and that was well, absolutely, incredible for me. I was flabbergasted. But can you see what people are doing, with their pens and pencils, and then the mouse? The right eye, the left eye. So moving on the left, of course, you don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, this is what we have observed all together. Um, this is not, an abnormal behavior. I spoke about this with drawing scientists, and you can do this with some patients having some, brain diseases or brain lesions. The ordinary brain starts from the macro details. I mean the you have the oval of the face, then you have the eyes, and then you start drawing details. But what is really interesting for me was to understand how people used to draw. So there was a sense of a brotherhood, if you will. So the fact of, being able and willing to work together, no matter where the drawing comes from, Africa, India, China, Asia. Now, I have another question for you. You may say, well, we are all equal, but cultures are still different. You're right. I mean, if we overlap all of the boomerangs we have drawn around the world, it's difficult to understand it's a boomerang. But when it comes to Australian boomerangs, well, you can really see it. I mean, heading upwards. So why heading upwards? It's a question for you. Why? Well, because you throw it. I mean, you launch it. Yes. It's really incredible what people think. Maybe you have the right answer. Okay, let me tell you what people meant by this. It's also a canvas. I mean, people use the boomerang as a canvas you can paint on, and then you hang it on the wall. So people, see this every day in their homes, heading upwards. So this is why they draw it like this. If you have an Australian friend, and then maybe you're not sure he or she is really from Australia, you can do this test. Okay, please draw a boomerang. So this is another example of non-converging objects. But when you split all of the different drawings on a country-by-country basis, you do see some convergence. So the way people draw a chair in Japan, in Korea, in Taiwan, or Japan. So this is something I really like. An ice cream. So this is our idea. We usually draw three balls. I mean, usually, I mean, this is what some countries do. In Italy, we don't have scoops, right? So I never thought about these, ice cream scoops that we don't have in Italy and in Hungary. Now, on some things, of course, for example, if you ask a question to someone in Japan, the question was, can you draw a traffic light? They have horizontal traffic lights. Look at the teddy bears. I mean, there's an influence from the Japanese manga, so they're very kind of playful, in their attitude. This is another problem for many scientists. When it comes to drawing a fish, we have the candy effect. Is this a fish or is this a candy? So we don't know what to do. So it's either right or left. There's no up, there's no down. So this is a candy effect if you overlap all of the drawings from all over the world. But if you go to Japan, India, Turkey, and six other countries, they know how to draw a fish very well. So they know what the direction is, which is kind of surprising. Uh, I have a question for you. Can you interpret this? This is from some of my friends in Japan. So in Japan, apartments are very small. When they buy the fish in a restaurant, you have to serve it with the head to show that it's freshly fished. And I don't know why, but the head must be on the left. So this is why people in Japan draw fish like this. Now this has to be well double checked and verified, but I believe my friends. So we have so many people drawing fish in the same way, same direction. There must be a reason why. Now, this is a snowman. Now, people use three different levels around the world. They only have two in Japan. Great questions. And what about a watermelon? So in Australia, it's ready to be eaten. In Ukraine, it's, well, you have to remove you have to peel it and then you eat it. Anyway, this was my first project. I just wanted to share this with you. It was very successful when I first, presented the project, and then many other, let's say, competitors did the same. It is one of the many possible ways to make sure you understand artificial intelligence. When you work with artificial intelligence, you have to come to terms with biases. Sometimes there's one bias saying we are all equal. In other cases, you have a cultural bias. The fish that you've just seen with the head on the left instead on the right. So it's an exploration of human beings, and then all of this is AI based. The second project I'd like to draw your attention on is WonderNet, the physicality of the network. Now, when you have 3D networks, they're really, really great. People don't understand what this is because you see so many small and big clusters. You have to turn them, to rotate them, but something interesting does emerge. Look at the overlapping technique. I mean, it's always sort of limited, if you will. Nodes that don't want to be overlapping. But if you zoom in, look at the links. They look like highways, motorways, turnpikes. And once again, they are so elegant and they give momentum to these shapes, and they are so easy to be interpreted. Now, you can see here two different dimensions, which is what you can use to better interpret data. If you have a third dimension, it's even easier to understand clusters or trends. This is what scientists do, but it's also easy to understand the shapes from nature. You know, these networks are based on the exploration of natural phenomena. So all of this is possible thanks to ELI, so Elastic Link Model. And Nima is the creator of ELI. He's one of my partners, and we used to work together on ELI. Now, the FDL, which is the force directed layout, which is a very direct system, it generates a stability, and then as soon as you have a stable object, you don't know what will happen to networks because links are overlapping. So you solve the problem with the ELI technique or elastic model. Now, when the network is bigger, wider, broader, and even more complicated, you can print it. I will show you some 3D prints. So once again, if you print it, it's easier to be construed because with the tip of your finger, you can touch a link and you can see where it starts and where it ends. So once again, this network can be easily 3D printed. This is a major piece of innovation that encouraged us to develop fantastic 3D networks. Some of them have been made in bronze at the Battaglia foundry here in Milan. So this is a random network. This is the network you've seen before. This is the fake news network, FNN. FNN is the Pizza Gate. I'm not going to tell you what the Pizza Gate is. Don't want to make you sad. Look at this one. So in this case, you have the brain network. So it looks like a brain. Once again, these networks are really easy to be understood. Really, it's crystal clear for scientists that have used this way to show and to represent data. Let me now show you the aesthetics of this system. For example, we start from a random network, then we attach this model to it, then there's an explosion so we can really see how it looks like. Well, we can see beautiful forms and shapes coming up. Look at the elastic system. So there's harmony, there's aesthetic cohesion because we do no longer have lines. In this case, we have curves. So we sort of have turns. And you can see it's flickering. And this is another explosion. I really like this one for aesthetic reasons that I'm going to convey to you, hopefully. Look at this one. This is the extreme contemplation of the beauty of a network with plenty of, expression features, and it becomes the perfect shape, if you will, in compliance with 3D volumes in order to represent a data set. Once again, the perfect shape. Look at the straight lines, look at the curves. You can use this model. It brings about consequences to the editing technologies, but it's the entire harmony that changes the entire positioning of all the clusters and subclusters. So this is why we have some creations as I have before with the Battaglia foundry. This is made in bronze. I hope Andreas is attending. So Andreas is one of the persons working there, and even the owner must be here. It's a beautiful foundry, and we are, let's say, transforming sculptures like this one. We are using bronze and many other materials. Let me now talk about AI culture. Um, let's say this is it's the only insight I have for you tonight. So I'd like to talk about general concepts plus something which is a little bit more intriguing. Luca, one of my dear friends, is here, and he's the one who deployed this incredible effort. So let me talk about Fox2Net. So we start from this blue balls you can see here. So inside the balls, we would like to have a network where nodes and links are able to represent the right blue bubble combination BBC. So a very simple, pixel to pixel system. Okay, let me skip details. Anyway, you have a generator and you have a discriminator. So the 3D generator fights against the 3D discriminator and vice versa. So they fight against each other because they want to manage the best inputs. Then you keep going on, so you have inputs, then you have the model generating systems, then you have the target. At the very beginning, the model couldn't speak, but then all of a sudden, we managed to give it a structure. Can you see all of the central lines from left to right? You can see the evolution, the development, and then stepwise, they turn into something tangible, concrete, which is very similar to our target. Now, this is what the model is generating. If this is very similar to the target, the model is able to create a combination made of nodes and links representing those volumes. And voila. So there are, some, well, steps that I will talk about later. Anyway, we can turn the model into this beautiful sculpture. At the very beginning, you have bubbles, you have humanoids, and so let's see what happens to the model. I mean, is it able to, move, from, the bubble-based system to something which is a little bit more complicated? So what we have is a beautiful collection. So we have so many beautiful sculptures as a product of our effort. Now, all of this is so interesting, even more so if you want to measure the real space occupied by the model. Now, the model, as you can see, is able to be transformed into so many different shapes. These shapes do comply with the natural laws. For example, look at the gravity. In many cases, you have, very strong bubbles. So this is an attempt to explore the spaces occupied by volumes. And here, the source of inspiration is the shapes that humankind developed centuries ago. This is the final view. You can really understand a little better how we reach all of those targets. Well, basically, I have to say we start from a general shape. For example, I'm taking a picture of me and my friend. The system is able to identify the combination of both links and nodes, being able to match the form or the shape you want to put forward. What you see here is, well, two individuals kissing, and you can see the movement. So it's a sort of, it's a complicated combination of links and nodes, so they are hugging and kissing. You're also lucky enough to have the same model or sample here.
Vicino tanti-
Well, I have to admit, this is something that I've been fascinated by, and some of the shapes I work with have turned into sculptures and some haven't. But actually, to some point, my objective was to reduce to the minimum the number of elements that could still describe something very complex. And that was my goal, and this is something that we were able to hit through AI. And you may have understood what my job is like. So, having a goal, having a wish, and not necessarily working on it with my hands. So, a model shall do this for me on my behalf. It's a kind of a meta art, if you will. So, I ask a model to fulfill my dreams. And here is another example, which you might have seen, you might have played with. This is portrait. Perhaps you remember Madame de Bellamy. She was very popular a few years ago. Perhaps nobody remembers about her anymore. It was a very interesting project. It is a very vague shape, non-complex. Well, you can hardly tell what it is, and it could be, let's say, it could be exchanged for any piece of work, and it was paid some $450 approx. Within a year time, less than a year time, actually, I was able to turn it into something that it was no longer vague. Well, of course, I had an aesthetic objective. I wanted to make it more clear, more accurate, more precise, as if I were the Michelangelo or somebody from Renaissance. And I wanted everybody to have it. So, one thing is to go to a museum and go and see something, but actually, I just wanted everybody to be able to click and have access. And this is back to let's say 2018. It was the very first system that was able to actually turn paintings into something different, to something more accurate. And for a couple of years, nobody really knew how to really do it. So we had this very great visibility. And I remember journalists asking me, so how about this AI? And of course, this topic has been also densely debated within this very venue itself. And I would always remember with the first step of my job, showing this first image, turbulence, zero year, the Big Bang, if you will. And if you do close up, well, you only see a full explosion of colors going everywhere, basically, with no specific meaning. And then the system goes on, and actually it just goes and it follows your instructions, because of course it doesn't have it doesn't have a way to go by himself. Well, now I have to say that a artist is clearly and easily manipulating AI in a very realistic manner. And this is always more the case as we go forward. We're definitely driving towards more accurate. We're becoming closer and closer to human, but we're still not there. So we're kind of in between. So, on a way, we can simulate the way a man is drawing, but we're still not there. So, AI is still not there. And so, what we came up with at the beginning, it was some distorted shapes, still very fascinating. Well, for many of you, for sure. See the inconsistency here between these two faces. So there's a kind of face on the left hand side, but it's not realistic. So AI portrait number two, it was something that we were, let's say, making available for 5 days. Well, the let's say the first version was there for more time, whereas number two was there available only for 5 days. And we were kind of teasing, that was the objective. And we wanted the world basically to have to be able to see shapes through the filter, through the lens of Renaissance. Of course, I will not go through a small summary of what Renaissance is, although there are some things that you should know. But I will just focus on the self-centered decision. The need that they had back then to understand more about themselves. They had this willingness to find out about the person behind the painting, for instance. Now I'm running through this very quickly, and this painter here was one really capable of saying, there's more than a portrait in a painting. And because a portrait can, of course, speak for social status as well, not just about the beauty of a person or the way it looks and so on. A kind of a psychological analysis emerged from that, and there was this again this love towards self, something that we've experienced with the selfie mode through telephones more recently. And so AI Portrait 2 was being established within this context. And of course, it was way more evolved with respect to release number one. And it could do, let's say that it could, it could, it could detect easier in an easier way, so to speak. It could detect and identify the person right away out there in the reality. So, namely, let's say that people will be able to tell who the person was through something that had been processed by an AI model. And of course, the system is capable of simulating any shape, either human or any shape virtually. And you see here the way it works. And this is a friend of mine who is becoming also part of that space, AI space. And because he's only able painting Renaissance faces. And now I'll tell you something that sounds very much from the past. but actually it has been for a year or so, it has been the only way to be able to have a AI portrait Renaissance type, as we had no competitors back then. So uh, I was very much interested into this idea of self, the willingness to represent oneself, and also being able to kind of depict oneself better with respect to the other species in the planet, for instance. This is something that I wanted the system to highlight, and that would then be, let's say, it would have been seen in a Renaissance painting. And there's something really interesting here as you're touch basing something very crucial within AI, that is inequality. If you think about it, from a cultural standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint and from a aesthetic standpoint, being white has always been dominant in the Western culture. And and somehow these biases, again, are being incorporated also by paintings. So when we go and see a collection, there's so many biases accumulating, stocking up on one another. You usually come across a man who's white, and most of times, and and also, if you consider the collector, usually is a wealthy man, possibly American, white skin. And up until the documentation, it's very difficult, for instance, to come across African art or artistic expression from any other countries and cultures. So this kind of Western bias was not only in paintings, but it would only expand throughout, I would say, throughout economies and cultures. And it it was interesting for us to see whether people would take this challenge and be willing to change things, and they did not, of course, and I was. Because of course in Renaissance there are some paintings of black people, but they are not as many in number as those depicting white people, and so therefore there were fewer in number, and AI would not recognize it as much. And then Asian, they were very happy because they said we're closer to Europe. African, they experienced that as it was a game, but actually black Americans rejected this entirely, and they started to write about this inequality. I don't know whether you heard about perhaps Fox News and other channels in the US saying that this would actually um, let's say, downgrade the idea of equality. So it was a clear inequality. And therefore, we had to shut down the whole project because we were scared of being pursued, And one last thing that I'd love to share with you, it's a small video to start with, 4 minutes, and you can or you can also check on my channel, by the way, and it's called 150 Years of Nature. So I was filming this, and I'm actually quite well known in a scientific publications domain because I'm able to tell about these topics through films, through small films, and I do believe this is one of the most beautiful I've ever made so far. So enjoy.
This is Nature's publication record. 150 years of interconnected research, represented by the majority of Nature's papers. A snapshot of the ever-growing web of collaboration and discovery that is science. Each dot is a paper. The colour represents the field, yellow for earth and space science, green for physics, and so on. Two papers are connected if a third references them both. Using these simple rules, scientists built the network paper by paper. Let's start from the beginning, 1869. These are the early days of science publishing. Back then, papers didn't exist as they do today. Rather, they took the form of correspondence, popping up sporadically. But over time, things change. They start to cluster together into disciplines. Communities emerge. In 1976, the discovery of high-temperature superconductors leads to a blossoming of similar papers in nature, shown here in green. It was a field which would continue to grow throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Back to the late 1930s now, the two world wars lead to an increase in nuclear physics research as nations raced to split the atom. And this too was reflected in Nature's publication record as nuclear physics papers cluster together in the late 30s and early 40s. And that's a paper putting forward a concept in genetics called canalization. It was published in 1942, but remained largely uncited for decades. That is until the late 90s, when new discoveries led to it finding new relevance. Each paper takes its place in this network of nature, but that's just the beginning. Every discovery is built on the work which precedes it, and then in turn forms the foundations of the discoveries of the future. And we can see that too. Let's take Watson and Crick's seminal paper on the structure of DNA as an example. Here it is. Below it is every paper that it referenced, not just Nature papers, every paper. Then every paper that those papers referenced, and so on. Above it is all the papers that built their work based on Watson and Crick's discovery. At the centre are the most highly cited papers, orbited by those with fewer connections. By looking from either end, we can see the fields cluster together. Let's look at the papers referenced by Watson and Crick. As well as biomedical science, there are contributions from other fields. Chemistry and physics feed into the discovery of the double helix. After publication, the picture looks somewhat different. The structure of DNA formed a springboard for engineering and technology research. There are clusters of mathematics papers, even studies from the humanities and social sciences. Every paper has its own story, its own unique network, and each of those networks connects to others to form a whole. Every paper in every field playing their part in the global process of research and discovery. Over 150 years, nature too has played its own small part, contributing its publication record to the great interconnected network of science.
Grazie. Volevo farvi vedere.
Well, thank you. I wish I could show the names of everybody, those who make music, data analysis. This was not an easy project. And Asso Barbasi, Carlo Ratti, they have been so helpful. I joined Boston working with Carlo Ratti and then Laszlo, so a lot of what they've done has come down to me, and I'm able to actually keep on doing what I love. And I'd love to close with a very small overview. So this is the scientific piece that is behind all work. So all of the works you've seen, they have an equivalent into paper, but I didn't want to show you the maths of it. But as far as this one, actually, it makes sense because mapping the NFT revolution, this is a paper that we made recently is becoming extremely important as people want to explore the NFTs. And we've been able to gauge an incredible number of data, which has allowed me to show you more a lot of NFTs. 160 cryptos, blockchain that have been examined, and huge amount of information. And this this is something that I meant to share also in the exhibition, but I understood that there's something playful that you will find out more about upstairs, which I didn't want to interfere with visual experiences, which have more to do with the understanding of the phenomenon itself. So let me show you what was the time analysis, and then the explosion, the final, the ending, where there was a small drop of NFTs. But we discovered about this world understanding, and there were large investors which are buying and selling much more than others. And this has been so interesting to the point that the online paper tells you a lot about NFTs, and that's a good starting point. And I love to close by speaking through the exhibition very quickly. Something that perhaps you might not see, you might not grab upstairs. Well, you will see it, and there are three steps, three different visual experiences with three different music in the background that have been written, that have been composed by Abusi for for this specific purpose. First is a collection, and with a contribution from Lucas Tornaiolo, who has put together all this data and tell about it. Now, of course, it was not so easy for me to show you all this through a visual experience. So my attempt is very much to overwhelm you with the greatest number of images that you're able to record as human beings. I do deal with this kind of things, so this is what I'd love to do. So being able to literally overwhelm you with a number of layers, number of images. 12 million NFTs we've analyzed. 500,000 are those you will see. So the three walls are actually displaying different visualizations. And then it goes through time. So at the beginning, you will see CryptoKitty, so waves of card players. So you'll see the whole story of NFTs. And I meant to tell you about NFTs just by simply show you NFTs, which may sound banal, but it works. And you see them all. And after you've seen them, then you will know more about the aesthetics, which is very peculiar to the NFT world. Whereas the second is the attempt to bring you towards the third stage, the third step. In the second, you will see a reproduction of the most popular NFTs, which have been reproduced, which have been replicated by NFTs. Third, AI, new generation AI, which is capable to absorb these images, to deliver new images which are not existing yet. So a variety, an unbelievable and endless type of images, and next to it, you will basically see 8 films, 8 different stories. Well, you have to trust me, but I'm a credible person, and actually all films have been made through words only. Now, there's some frames from these films which are too fast, and you will not be able to seize it. But I'd love to share with you the beauty of some images. Well, images that can be seen at the resolution that I'm choosing. So there are some frames which I'm now sharing, where I felt that I wanted to keep the kitsch aesthetics of the NFT world through shapes and colors that I never used before and that I'd never seen before. Landscapes, circumstances, humanoids, shapes, very sinuous as well, with the redundant colors such as gold and silver. These shapes that have emerged after very long experience, I did start working with text to video many years ago with a for a project for a Biennale Venice. Well, it was actually 2 years ago, but it seems ages. And so these small frames tell about the richness of the images that you will appreciate in a moment. Now, my attempt has been in some videos to tell about the common world, punk, funk, and something that may sound kind of familiar or recurring in your knowledge. But actually, this is a more sophisticated step, and these shapes have really surprised me, as I found them pretty interesting. It wasn't easy to find them, and actually all the statements that I've written to create them now are not being unveiled. I don't want to show you, um, because I'm actually hiding the statement, the phrase, because otherwise you will be able to generate that very image if I say it to you. Well, I'd love to say it to you because I'm a researcher, but if I wear the artist role, the artist hat, then I say, I will not tell you, otherwise you'll be able to replicate the same thing tomorrow. So actually, this kind of elastic link environment and networks are very recurring. These are things that I refer to when I get across. So I hope you're all ready to enjoy the beautiful experience upstairs later on. Thank you so much.